Welcome to the 21st episode of Teachers Classes Presents Bollywood TALKies with Outlook. I'm your host, Mitrajit Bhattacharya, and my guest tonight is an actor who's known for his work in commercial Hindi movies, but with a difference. He's equally comfortable playing a small-time Delhi conman and a rich man on a holiday in Spain with bachelor friends. Calling spade a spade, living on his own terms, unaffected by the glitz and glamour of the movie business. Abhay Deol, welcome to Teachers Classes Presents Bollywood TALKies with Outlook.
Thanks for that lovely intro, yeah.
You're not in Mumbai, you're not in Goa, you're not in US. Where are you?
I'm in Canada right now.
Let's start from the very beginning. Socha Na Tha wasn't exactly the Band Baja Bharat launch of an industry kid. Imtiaz Ali's first film, a simple love story, a slow starter that eventually was liked by all. Were you happy with your launch?
I'd met Imtiaz through another colleague in the industry and he did a narration for me. And at the time, Imtiaz was talking to some other producer who was kind of worried, I guess, debut director, debut actor, this producer wasn't sure of us.
Right.
And then me being a Deol, he was also like, why should I launch a Deol in a romantic comedy? Because of the age. So I took him to my brother because I knew Bhaiya would take a chance on him. Bhaiya does take chances on new talent and I knew he'd like this script. So for me, I was kind of instrumental in getting that done, in putting that film forward. So no, I wasn't worried about anything. If anything, I was pushing for it.
You experimented with more non-mainstream movies like Manorama, 6 Feet Under, Ek Chalis Ki Last Local after Socha Na Tha. Were you confident that your good looks and acting capabilities would get you big commercial movies whenever you wanted?
I, at that time, was much younger and more idealistic. So I had no desire to be part of the mainstream.
Okay.
The youth, there was inexperience. So you eventually as you grow older, you see you can be idealistic, but you have to be practical too. Right. I was not practical at all. I was just idealistic. And I was like, I know I can make this happen. Of course I can, And so as far as my looks and the whatnot were concerned, I was more concerned with the fact that people would cast me as the sweet boy next door, especially after Socha Na Tha. And I got a lot of those offers and I turned them all down because I was like, I'm not that. I did that with Socha Na Tha. Being from the film industry, I also knew that if you do something and clicks or people like it, they'll want to do that all over and over again.
That's right.
So the only mainstream offers I was getting was like, as they call it, chocolate boy, whatever. I don't know where that term comes from. And just really, I didn't mind playing like sort of a silly character that I did in Ek Chalis, but Ek Chalis was a dark comedy. It didn't conform to many things that Bollywood did. So I didn't mind within the context of something that was different, but everything that's coming my way was a repeat of Socha Na Tha. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I did Aista after Socha Na Tha,
Right.
It was, again, far removed from who I am and where I come from. So no, I did not think much of market or anything. I just felt like the work should speak for itself and that if someone doesn't do it, then it'll never happen. And like I said, there was the privilege of being who I am, where I'm from, even though I didn't necessarily work with my family after the first film, just their presence was enough.
Few from your kind of background with your kind of looks would want to experiment. Like, look at your first 4 films. I mean, they were not really mainstream movies. So you were pretty clear in the beginning of your career that you wanted to do commercial movies, but with a difference, the way I introduced you. I mean, you had your own definition of commercial movies. Now, that needed a lot of courage. So did you get that courage from, or the confidence from the fact that you knew your craft and you knew people in the industry?
Well, I didn't know that many people in the industry. I knew them just as an acquaintance, a hi, hello at best, but not really. I didn't know anybody. My first 5 films were all debut directors.
Right.
So I was active in my search for new content.
Right.
Like with Socha Na Tha, also with Manorama, which was my 5th movie, Navdeep, he was a friend.
Right.
And he was also talking to some other producer. He had another actor in mind. He didn't want me because he felt like I was too young and I was too urban. He had an older character, father of a 5-year-old. Small town guy, and it's only because I found him the finance and the producer. He's like, fine, will you grow a mustache for me and maybe we can make this work.
Yeah.
So I was, no, I think I was just going about my business. And I think, as they say, ignorance is bliss. Coincidentally, at the same time, the multiplexes started coming up. So just for a brief
Right.
window, there was more exhibition space and there was
Right.
product.
Right.
So, and the studios started to come in and they
Yeah.
needed to show in their books that they have everything from the big budget ones to the small budget ones because it makes business sense. So that's how those just came through. And I didn't even realize that that's why they were coming through. At that time, I just felt like, no, there are enough people in this industry in a position of power who want change. But I soon learned, well, not soon enough, that that's not true. The people in power are actually more concerned at the bottom line. And because they have to be, they're running companies, they're running businesses.
Right. Right.
They're not here to challenge the creative system. They're only here to make use of the system that's there.
Then came the real biggie, my favorite, everybody's favorite, the national award-winning film by Dibakar Banerjee, Oye Lucky Lucky Oye, a movie that will remain in the list of top 50 Hindi movies ever. But the release wasn't without hiccups. Launched the same week as 2611, the movie still got the audience it deserved. Take us through the experience of filming the movie and the release.
I mean, filming it was, let's just put it this way, like from the producer to like the line producer and stuff, they're my friends even today. So that set particularly was amongst those few where everybody bonded. Of course, there were ups and downs, but the shoot was a pleasure. Dibakar was very clear on what he wanted. One of the things I noticed about Dibakar is that he's a really good actor. So to have that, not that he wants to act, I think he should. But so to get that guidance and direction from him made it quite pleasurable. And of course, it was Delhi and it's different from Bombay. There's more space in a way. The weather is kind of better. It was cooler. So that was kind of nice. And as far as the release is concerned, yeah, I mean, we got attacked on, I remember, what was it, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday it was.
Right.
The 3 days that they attacked us, right? And then the cinemas were closed over the weekend.
Right.
And I remember we had a premiere at the Goa Film Festival on the Wednesday, on the day
Right.
of the attack.
Right.
And at that moment, I dropped any expectation of the movie because obviously I was more shocked at what was going on. And then the realization that there are people dying. So the thought of being upset about how this is going to affect my movie felt really cheap.
That's right.
And insensitive.
Right.
So I didn't get upset about the film releasing as much as I did about what was going on. But, as the weeks rolled on, the film didn't leave the cinemas. So it got its due, albeit slowly.
The very next year, you collaborated with Anurag Kashyap to create the most edgy version of the classic Devdas ever, Dev.D. How did you come up with the idea and were you happy with the way the film shaped up eventually?
How it came up was, I had this vague memory in my head of being a kid and looking at a poster of Devdas with Dilip Kumar on it and thinking to myself, I'm going to be Devdas one day. I don't know if I made that up, dreamt it, but it feels like a memory. And as far as the concept is concerned, I read the book and I thought, wow, this is what kids are doing today, throw drugs into the equation as well, along with the alcohol. And it's still what kids are doing today. This writer, I believe he didn't like his book, this one, but it wasn't necessarily a great book, but I just wanted to know what is it that it kept being made over and over again. And just this recurring theme of this typical male from a patriarchal society, chauvinistic, romanticized, and the women kind of reduced to his support. So I thought this is a great time to explore and expose how the youth of today is experimenting with all sorts of substances, that it is a real problem, and that the role of women needs to transcend, get beyond. So that was, and also to show that drugs are something that will destroy a person. They're not cool. Then don't romanticize this. And that's the concept with which I went forward to Anurag with. I, of course, stuck to the book. I had him die in the end. In my original, I had the family, after the father dies, they cut him off from money.
Right.
And by then he's a drug addict. So to support his habit, he becomes a drug dealer.
Right.
And then in the end, the police chase him and he's running and he doesn't know where to go. So he runs towards Paro's house and gets shot outside the door.
Right.
But Anurag at the time thought that was too dark and he needed to make, which was kind of ironic coming from him because he's like the flag bearer of dark, offbeat cinema. And he was like, no, we should a little bit give hope. Fair enough. I think the film, it's a good film. He's a good director. But I still was married to the idea of sticking to the book in the end. And I also felt like the film still glamorized the character. Like in my vision, he was, and it's a director's vision. So I obviously went along with what he had. But for me, it was to put you off from doing drugs and alcohol, not turn you on, which is what I felt the film did. It made it cool. But then I suppose there's a formula you have to sell. You can't go all the way. You have, when you're trying to go against the formula, you got to still package it like almost as like the mainstream and then bring people in. So I understand that he had to package the film a certain way, but it kind of didn't go the way I wanted to in terms of its philosophy and visuals of putting you off from being this indulgent person, because the amount of people who came to me and said, oh, after I saw the film, I drank so much alcohol or I did this and that. And I'm just thinking in my head, that's exactly what I didn't want people to take from watching this movie. Okay. And as far as for the Chanda character was concerned, like I didn't want her, in my origin, she was an East European call girl, escort, working out of, Anurag put it in Delhi. I didn't have it in Delhi. I had a very convoluted version in LA and one in Bombay. Anurag did the genius thing of putting it in Delhi. I thought it worked. But for me, that whole escort working in India, she's her own boss and she doesn't feel any shame in it. And for me, that was another statement because it's so not digestible for us to accept a sex worker as somebody empowered. I'm not saying that there's no human trafficking. I'm not saying that sex workers aren't exploited. They are. But in this new economy with new technology, a lot of women are doing it online and don't have an abusive pimp. And so I was trying to explore that theme because there's such a taboo about selling sex that I thought, how can I bring empathy to this person, even though she's not? Because in the book, it's like, oh, I'm so regretful of the prostitute with a heart of gold. I want to break that too. Just like Dave isn't cool. Like, he actually should be called out. This prostitute isn't apologetic to you either. And that to me was a statement too. And Paro, of course, was like, screw you. I'm not going to pine over you.
Right.
So for me, the idea was to bring them all out of this shell or rather this image that we as a culture had thrust upon them. And I felt when I read the book that that's what the writer was actually trying to do, and that's why I contemporized it.
So even selling the concept wasn't easy. That's what we have heard, that you it's not that the Anurag was the first guy you went to and he picked it up. So what was taking so much time for contemporary filmmakers to understand the concept which you were trying to propose?
I wouldn't tell people it's a modern day take on Dev.D. I would first just give them the story. They would hear about this loser character and this prostitute and this sweetheart, and they were like, it's an art film, it's an art movie, like no one's going to make this. But then when I would tell them, well, it's been made 10 times over, they'd be like, really? And then when I would say it's Dev.D, then the penny would drop. Honestly, I did not approach anyone mainstream, big or anything that because I did not think they would take this on. I always wanted Anurag to begin with because we knew each other back then. And so I always knew this was the film I would take to him. And I knew that he would love it. And sure enough, he did. With him too, he didn't guess what film it was. He heard me out. He's like, yeah, okay, well, what is it? Whatever. I said, by the way, you know this story. You've seen it a few times. Then he was like, really? What do you mean? Just like everybody else. And then I said, Dev.D. And then he was like, he didn't talk to me for half an hour. He was like, shut up, I'm seeing it now. And, music was a big element to it. It was like
huge. I think music was really the standout element of the movie, apart from obviously the treatment and acting and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it was
would you like to comment a bit on the music and Amit Trivedi's edginess, how it came about?
Yeah, because music was always an important part of the narrative. I've always wanted to do films where you do have songs, but you don't break into song and dance. And so this was a film that would be carried by its music. That was a part of the narration. And Anurag found Amit Trivedi. He sat with him and got that brilliant soundtrack done.
A reasonably successful appearance as the love interest of Aisha in Aisha came the biggest movie of your career, the poetic and lyrical magnum opus Zindagi na Milegi Dobara. You guys must have had a ball in Spain. Take us through some genuine moments while filming the movie.
Look, it was hard work. We were working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. But I remember that no matter how many hours we worked, we never really felt tired because we were having so much fun. And every other day we would go out and eat someplace nice. We had to travel the entire country almost, so we got to see a lot of it. We started the film, before we started it, we went to a music festival. And so those memories are really clear, the beaches were nice. Then of course, training for skydiving and then skydiving too. And we shot the underwater portions in Sharm el Sheikh So going to Egypt, it was just, I don't even know if I'll ever get that chance to make this kind of a film or this kind of travel again.
What the movie did for Spain tourism, I mean, they probably didn't need to advertise in India thereafter. I mean, it's like...
Yeah, it's part of their marketing syllabus, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is incredible, I think.
Divakar's political thriller Shanghai came next, where your performance as a South Indian bureaucrat stood out. The music score by Vishal Shekhar was brilliant. Were you happy with the way Shanghai shaped up?
Look, Dibakar is a really good filmmaker. And even like by then I'd already worked with him, and with him, like I was like, whatever you want to make, I'll support you. And he wanted to take me into a space completely different. Like I had just come out of Zindagi, where I played this urban, city kid. And then suddenly I'm this older IAS officer from Tamil Nadu, and there was just, and so that excited me. We had to find the way he speaks. You had to get his accent. Accent training for actors is not something that is easy to come by in India.
Yeah.
So we had to create his accent, So that process was fun. As far as the film, I think on one level, while it's a really well-made film, on one level it fails to kind of draw you in, because outside of my character, who actually sacrifices and does for the larger good, the other two characters are in it for revenge. And it's just such a good-looking movie that it doesn't allow you to get in the heads of these characters. And I remember someone asked a question. I remember saying this in an interview. I said, well, if there's any hero in this film, it's my character, simply because he sacrifices something for the greater good. And Dibakar, I remember thinking, oh, I never thought of that, which kind of surprised me a bit. And I think that's why it lacked a little bit of soul, because it was just too caught up in anger. Like that was Dibakar's angry film, and you need to balance your anger out. And I think that on one level it does definitely make you angry, but it doesn't give you the satisfaction of seeing someone or connecting to one character at least. It doesn't allow you in there. And that was my only critique of the movie.
Around this time, you started picking up smaller but meaningful roles in movies like Ranjana and later Happy Bhag Jayegi, etc. But your interest in being a part of large Bollywood sets was clearly waning. And you started spending a lot of time away from Mumbai. What were you not liking here?
I'm not liking. I'd called out the stars on fairness creams by then. I'd taken a stand against the music company.
Music label,
for exploitation or whatever, clause, and I stood up. I painted my eye black. People think I actually read it, and I painted it black. So that had an effect. People who are going to be wary of working with anybody, especially when you are calling out the powers that be. When you speak to power, you get blacklisted. Simple. And blacklist doesn't mean there's an actual book. It just means people are going to be nice to you, but they're not going to work for you. And so that happened. I mean, it's okay. Like, it took me back to my early days of this industry, where I wasn't mingling or interacting with anybody. I was just doing my thing. But it's just that by then what had happened was the industry kept becoming smaller and smaller in terms of who has power. Because by then the multiplexes were also not enough. They stopped mushrooming, growing, and the bigger films wanted to have all the screens. They didn't want to give any away. There's no government support for smaller movies like they used to with NFDC between the 70s and the 80s. So there was no outlet. So I wasn't about to take back what I'd said. I wasn't about to now start, okay, let's start going to XYZ's parties, and myself a part of any clique. So it slowed down on its own. And so I just had to accept that this is your own doing. And find my own space. I wouldn't say the role in Happy Bhag Jayegi is small. He's actually but Ranjana definitely. And I guess I was just doing things because, I mean, those were still scripts I believed in, and I think Anand's a good director. But my idea was always like to push forward from Dev.D. And I remember Dev.D was hard one to sell. After Dev.D came out, people wanted to make Dev.D with me again.
But that's a problem the industry has. I mean, and finally we follow formula.
Well, it's the fact that, okay, this worked. Now we have a number to what this kind of a movie can make. So we can give this number to produce this film. But my thing was, what worked for Dev.D? We took a chance. We took a risk. So if you really want to crack my formula, it's take another risk. Keep taking risks. And there was no appetite for that. And then when I started speaking truth to power, there was no appetite for me. So it was fun. It was interesting. And by then I'm glad I don't regret anything, because I didn't want my work to define my happiness. Or, of course, you get an image. We all do. And I guess I am defined by my choices. We all are. So define is the wrong word. I guess I couldn't have playing the game be the thing that dictates my life. Let's put it that way.
But you spoke about a lot of very important issues which plague the industry. Like you spoke about the fairness cream, your campaign against fairness products. You spoke about blind items, which a lot of stars who have earlier come on my show have spoken about it. One thing they don't like about the movie business is everybody has a space. You can do what you want, but don't run someone down. And these blind items do that. And a lot of these things we are seeing now, after 5-6 years of you having raised those campaigns, coming back and taking shape. More and more people are talking about fairness creams. You know what has happened. I mean, the biggest brand had to change their brand name.
Actors and actresses who endorse fairness creams are talking about Black Lives Matter. I was like,
yeah, exactly. So now it has become a glow instead of fair. So you know what's happening in the industry. And you were probably the one who started it. And I think calling names, the biggest names in the industry, I don't know what was going on in your head, because I can't imagine somebody taking a stance against all the big powers of the industry, talking about fairness creams, blind items. Obviously, the stance you took against the music label, which is the biggest music label in the country. So are you satisfied somewhere? The little movement which you started on your own, a lot of it is seeing results which you wanted to see then. So does that make you happy?
It does, because you feel validated. People call me arrogant. Maybe I was. I'm not denying it. I'm not a perfect human being. I'm not trying to be perfect or role model or anything. I'm just doing what I believe in. I don't need to be applauded for the stands I take. I don't have power outside of the industry. I have power within my industry. Even if you don't give me work, you can't take away my power. I have my voice. So within the industry, because I'm like, how can we comment on other industries, whether it be the environment or politics and all, when you yourself in your own industry don't practice what you preach? And also your power is within the film industry. Make change around the people around you. Speak to them, and then the rest will change on its own. So I was just going by that, and I was hoping that people would recognize that and come to. You said that people say, yeah, in the industry say blind items are good. The same people actually put them out there. You think actors don't put blind items on other actors? They do. I've had producers put false stories about me in the market. I've had directors talk bad about me on purpose behind my back. I've had people come from different juries of award function and tell me, Arey, I wanted you, like one of them had come because I wasn't even nominated for Dev.D. And so they were like, oh, I really wanted you. But then XYZ director said, I will tell XYZ actor that you got Abhay in there. And just petty things like that. And because I'd grown up in a film family where I had heard, oh, so-and-so's going to get the award tomorrow, or these awards are a sham, I just had no respect for them to begin with. And that's probably also where my arrogance came from my privilege. And I could afford to say, you know what, I know how you give awards. I myself have been called for 3 awards to say, please come, we'll give it to you. I was just like, that's why you give it to me? No. By the third time, because it'd been so many years and nothing was happening, I was like, you know what, fine. Why am I the only one screaming? Because ultimately you were the lone voice, and being the lone voice, you get branded as what's your problem? Because nobody else is doing it. Everyone's playing along. So what's your problem? So then I thought, well, okay, this is what the people want. Then I don't want to be suffering on my own. Fine. Okay. And I remember this one award function, they called me and I said, yeah, sure, I'll come. But I was starting a film on the day of the award. I said, look, I'm starting a movie on the same day. If you don't mind, I'll do a video message for you. Like, oh, we're really sorry. We need you there. But it's okay. We'll give it to somebody else. And then the person who spoke to my manager called her back and told her, I didn't want to say this in front of everybody else, but I respect him more now for not coming. I was like, I wasn't not coming. I was saying I'll take it, but he said I can't come physically. So stuff like that. So the sim industry, which complains, also partakes. And I find that very hypocritical. It's like either don't partake and not, instead of complaining, do something about it, say something about it, or partake and accept whatever's coming your way.
You have acted in commercial movies, as I introduce you again, with a difference. Not beefing yourself up and beating 20 people at the same time, the way quintessential mainstream heroes would. Now, the OTT platforms are seeking character graphs exactly the way you were doing maybe 15 years, 10 years ago. You almost read the audience choice 15 years ago. So do you feel that, I'm not saying you take responsibility for this change. Are you happy with the OTT movement that it's democratizing? One is it's democratizing, and second is it's taking away the pressure of first weekend at the box office to sustained viewing of audiences anywhere in the world if the movie is good, whether it takes 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year.
For sure, it's democratizing, no doubt. Just like with the multiplexes coming up, and then for a brief moment, that's why a lot of new talent was able to come in, and some new ideas came in before it got taken over again by the few. But so just like that, now the OTT platforms have come in. But while the multiplexes are physical, finite entities, OTTs are infinite. It's a digital space, and it's just by nature, the industry would try and even take over that space like they did with the multiplexes. But they won't be able to take over the OTT space because it's far too vast. It's a worldwide reach and it's endless. It's a limitless, a bottomless pit. Right. So, it's not like out of the goodness of any particular person that is being democratized. It's the nature of the beast. And that's why now you see so many various ideas and other actors, deservedly so, getting front and center. Part of the Bollywood formula was also, it's about the hero and the heroine, really. And everybody else around them are there to kind of support them. And that's why a lot of the characters are caricaturized in Bollywood formulas. The uncle, the auntie, the mother, the father, you never remember the names. And it's sad to see good actors just kind of being only there for, again, glamorizing and bigging the main leads. And this becomes boring. For me, Bollywood, it's a genre, so it's nice once in a while. But you like to have different, I like variety is the spice of life. I want something different. I don't want to see song and dance within a horror film or a drama, So OTT platforms are suddenly now, by nature, allowing that to happen. And at least now the evolution of creative thought will happen, because just with Bollywood alone, you would have been stuck to that one genre.
And most importantly, a critic cannot diss your movie by giving 1 star and affect your box office. Doesn't happen anymore.
That too.
Congratulations on your recently released JL 50.
Thanks.
And also we have been seeing you in the OTT space for past 3-4 years. We loved you in Chopsticks and stuff like that on Netflix. So how is it going for you in particular with the OTT scene, and what can we expect from you?
Well, I had Chopsticks and then I had What Are the Odds, a film
which you produced, right? You produced as well.
Yes. Then I have a big show with Disney Hotstar coming out in Jan.
Okay.
I'm really happy that Chopsticks did well. What Are the Odds did well. JL50's done well. So if the show does well, then that's 4 in a row.
Okay.
So I couldn't ask for more. Like I said, I don't work. Money is not the driving force.
Right.
And so, of course, I want to make money. Don't get me wrong. But it's not the driving factor.
Yeah.
And so it's given me that chance to live my life. I'm not in a rat race. So one of the good effects of what my actions was, I didn't become part of any race.
Right.
And I've always believed that what you can do, I cannot, and what I can do, you cannot.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy.
But that was your hallmark since beginning. You were never a part of the rat race. The kind of movies which you have done even in the first 5 years, been all really not chasing any business goals. So
which was considered like commercial suicide. Right. And it was at some level, and that's why there was a lot of misunderstanding of who I was and what I stood for. People thought it was arrogance, and I think there was more ignorance than arrogance. I think there was more idealism than anything else. There was naivety there. And so now it just feels nice to be vindicated.
You often made this comment that you're fitting in. So have you fitted in now?
I don't think I'll ever fit in, but it's not something I think about. I have more empathy for the industry now. Obviously, when I was younger, there was more anger, and anger is not a good thing to hold on to.
Right.
It's great as a platform to give you a push, as long as you can move away from it. So, I have a lot more empathy for the industry, for sure. I understand why people do what they do. I get why not everybody has to have a vision, and that you don't have to have a vision to entertain. You could just manufacture a product. Right. No one's obliged to raise the bar. So those things I have definitely come to accept, but I think I've also accepted that because I'm happy with where I am. Right. I'm happy with the way things have moved around in the industry and the environment. I think if the OTT platforms had not come, yeah, maybe I wouldn't be working. I don't know. Or maybe I would be. I don't know. Like, you can't say either or, but definitely not as busy as I am today. And definitely not being able to work on more scripts and ideas, because I had more ideas after Dev.D, but just nobody wanted to make them. And I think very few people knew that it was my idea to begin with. And I don't market myself either, so marketing was centered around Anurag. And so that made me realize that you should market yourself too. And I was this ideal space of, no, my work should speak for itself. I wasn't even there to market the movie. So I've come to accept that also. I thought it should anger me that I have to do this. I thought it was cheap. But then I realized, wait a minute, if I just see this as part of my job, whether it's endorsing a brand or it's marketing a movie, it's part of your job. And that is arrogant to not do that. So those things I came to understand. I had to balance myself out.
If I ask you to say a line about the following directors, how will you? Just a line. Dibakar Banerjee.
Thick glasses and a funny sense of humor.
Anurag Kashyap.
Has lost weight, I believe. I needed to.
Zoya Akhtar.
I love Zoya. She's a trooper. She's a queen.
Anand L. Rai.
He's the Santa Claus.
Movies, web series that you have watched recently which you have loved?
Amongst the Indian stuff, I love Delhi Crime. And I just recently saw Dark, this German show, which was quite fun.
Who have been your biggest inspirations in your life?
I mean, I was definitely inspired by my Taya ji, his story, who I call Dad. He still doesn't get used to me calling him Taya when I'm doing an interview. But yeah, I was really inspired by his story. It gave me inspiration, find my own path, and then it's just watching a movie that really influences you. Like most of Stanley Kubrick's work, was inspiring to watch. Growing up, discovering world cinema, Pedro Almodovar, so all of that became part of the journey of inspiration.
You have ticked, obviously being an actor, you started as an actor, you've been a producer. Any plans of writing and directing?
I just directed a short film that I'm doing in post right now. And I did that just more for myself to see how much of an interest I have in directing. Directing, I didn't take it for granted that I would. I've produced, I've written, I've developed scripts, I've acted. Doesn't mean you can direct. I don't take that for granted.
Right.
And I did, and now I have more of that desire than ever before. But again, if I'm particular and choosy about acting, I'll be even more so for directing.
Right, that's right.
That's another reason why I didn't jump into it, because it's a longer commitment as a director.
Yeah.
And so it better be something that I really want to put out there. And I'm so particular about what I want to be as, what project I wanted to be as an actor. I'm going to be even more so militant about it as a director.
And Abhay Deol biopic would be titled?
Watch it at your own risk.
Thank you, Abhay Deol, for talking to me in Teachers Classes Presents Bollywood Talkies with Outlook. Stay safe, enjoy Toronto, and see you on the other side of the break.
See you soon. Thanks. Bye. I wouldn't tell people it's a modern day take on Devdas. I would first just give them the story.
Right.
They would hear about this loser character and this prostitute and this sweetheart, and they were like, "It's an art film. It's an art movie. Like no one's gonna make this." So then when I would tell them, "Well, it's been made 10 times over," they'd be like, "Really?" And then when I would say it's Devdas, then the penny would drop. Honestly, I did not approach anyone mainstream, big or anything that because I did not think they would take this on. I always wanted Anurag to begin with because we knew each other back then, and so I always knew this was the film I would take to him, and I knew that he would love it. And sure enough, he did. With him too, he didn't guess what film it was. He heard me out. He's like, "Yeah, okay, well, what is it? Whatever." Yeah. I said, "By the way, you know this story. You've seen it a few times." Then he was like, "Really? What do you mean?" Just like everybody else. And then I said, "Devdas," and then he was like. He didn't talk to me for half an hour. He was like, "Shut up, I'm seeing it now."